I only joined the gym to get stronger. But I never expected 3 women to lean in one day, laugh softly, and whisper, "You're our favorite distraction." From that moment on, everything changed. I never thought much about gyms beyond treadmills and clanking weights. But when I walked into that new place for the first time, I felt like an outsider stepping onto a stage where everyone already knew their part. The smell of metal and chalk dust hung in the air, mixed with faint notes of citrus cleaner. Music thumped in the background, steady enough to disguise my own awkward silence. That's when I noticed them. 3 women together, always together. They carried themselves differently than anyone else in the room. Confident but not loud. Graceful but in a way that came from experience, not vanity. They weren't there to show off. They were there to move, to sweat, to laugh with each other between sets like the world outside had no say in their happiness. At first, I kept my distance. I was the new kid, 20-something, trying to prove I belonged among all these machines and bodies that seemed stronger, faster, more certain. But every time my eyes wandered, just for a second, they'd drift toward the 3 of them. One with hair tied back neatly, precise in every movement, almost like she planned her whole day with the same discipline. Another with softer edges, a warmth in her smile that seemed to reach the people around her before she even spoke. And the third, quieter, watchful, the kind of presence that made you feel seen even when she hadn't said a word. I thought I was being subtle, just another guy sneaking glances at people who clearly belonged here. But they noticed. Of course they noticed. It happened during a water break. I was sitting on the edge of a bench, towel draped across my lap, trying to catch my breath after pushing too hard on the weights. They approached, like a tide rolling in without warning. One leaned just close enough that I could smell the faint sweetness of her shampoo, strands of hair escaping her ponytail. With a playful tilt of her head, she whispered, almost conspiratorial, "You're our favorite distraction." The words hit harder than any workout. I froze, half laughing, half panicking, because what was I supposed to say to that? My throat tightened. My heart thudded against my ribs like it wanted to break free. The other 2 stood just behind her, smiling knowingly, as if this was all part of a script I hadn't rehearsed for. I managed a small, nervous smile, the kind that probably gave away too much. How flattered I was, how unprepared I felt. The room suddenly seemed warmer, the hum of the music distant compared to the sound of their quiet laughter. It wasn't just the words, it was the way they said them. Like it wasn't a joke, but an invitation. Like they already knew how much space they occupied in my head after only a few glances. And in that moment, I realized something unsettling. This wasn't just a gym anymore. For me, it was about to become something far more complicated. After that first whisper, "You're our favorite distraction," I expected them to drift away, leaving me with nothing but the echo of their laughter in my head. But they didn't. Instead, they stayed near, as if the invisible line between us had already been crossed. Started small, almost casual. Between sets, one of them, Amelia, I would later learn, leaned against the weight rack, striking up conversation as if we'd been talking for months instead of seconds. "New here, aren't you?" she asked, her tone curious but warm, not the least bit condescending. Her hair, a glossy chestnut streaked with silver strands, caught the overhead lights in a way that made her look effortlessly radiant. I nodded, adjusting my grip on the towel. "First week," I admitted, trying to sound steady even as my pulse quickened. From the bench beside her, the second woman, Sophia, laughed lightly. "Explains the determination. You've been pushing like someone with something to prove." Her voice had that lilting quality, teasing yet edged with care, like she was already looking out for me without saying so directly. The third, Elena, was quieter. She didn't say much at first, but I felt her eyes on me, assessing, weighing. When she finally spoke, it was simple. "You have good form. Most guys your age don't." Her words were calm, deliberate, and for some reason, that quiet approval sank deeper than any compliment I'd gotten in months. They each had a way of drawing me in. Amelia's playfulness kept the energy alive, Sophia's warmth made the conversation flow naturally, and Elena's watchfulness grounded everything. reminding me that they weren't just teasing for fun. They were paying attention. The physical closeness came next, subtle but undeniable. Amelia brushed a bit of chalk dust from my forearm, the roughness of her fingers lingering just a second too long against my skin. Sophia, after watching me finish a set, patted my shoulder in encouragement, the pressure firm, almost sisterly. But the warmth in her eyes made it feel like more. And when Elena passed me her half-empty water bottle without a word, her hand brushed against mine, her gaze steady as if waiting to see how I'd react. I didn't know how to react. My chest tightened, not from the workout but from the realization that their attention wasn't mocking. It was deliberate, genuine. For a moment I worried it might all be a game. But the way their laughter softened around me, the way they included me in their circle without hesitation, told me otherwise. And still, the age difference hummed in the background of my thoughts like a quiet, persistent chord. They moved through the gym with the confidence of women who knew exactly who they were. I was younger, unpolished, still finding my footing. Not just here, but in life. Yet when I caught their glances, Amelia's playful sparkle, Sophia's open warmth, Elena's calm steadiness, I felt, for the first time in a long while, like I belonged. And maybe, just maybe, that was more dangerous than any weight I could ever lift. Over the next few weeks, something unspoken began to form between us. It wasn't announced or agreed upon, but it was there, woven into the rhythm of our workouts, the quiet laughter, the way they always seemed to save me a place near them. At first, I thought it was coincidence, but it kept happening. Whenever I walked in, there was space waiting, beside their rack, near their mats, or at the end of their row. Sometimes Amelia would wave me over with a quick flick of her wrist, grinning like she'd been expecting me all along. Sophia would slide her water bottle aside to make room. Elena would just nod subtly, as if to say, "You're with us now." The gym floor became smaller, more intimate when I was near them. During stretches, one of them would offer quiet guidance. A hand at the small of my back, the warmth of their palm lingering as they corrected my posture. Once, while reaching for a band, Sophia's hand brushed mine, neither of us pulling away immediately. The touch was nothing, and everything. What startled me most wasn't the contact itself, but how my body responded. Every graze of skin, every shift in their closeness, seemed to echo far longer than it should. My heart thudded too quickly for what the situation called for. My focus slipped, not from the weights, but from the heat of their presence. It wasn't just me noticing either. In the mirrors lining the gym walls, I caught them watching. Amelia, playful as always, let her gaze wander without shame, eyes sparkling when I caught her in the act. Sophia's looks were softer, like she was studying me with curiosity, trying to read me from the inside out. And Elena, her eyes were steady, unreadable, but when they met mine, I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. The strange part was how natural it began to feel. Their laughter between sets wrapped around me like a safety net. Their voices, low and steady, filled the space around me. Even in silence, they were there, leaning against machines, tying shoelaces, wiping sweat from their brows, but somehow always within reach. Still, beneath the surface there was tension. I could sense it pressing against the edges of our interactions, subtle but insistent, like a line drawn faintly in chalk, daring us to step across. I wanted to, God, I wanted to, but the fear of what it meant, what it looked like, what it could turn into, held me back. Late one evening, after a heavy workout, we found ourselves standing close in the cool-down area. Amelia nudged me lightly with her shoulder. Sophia leaned against the wall, her eyes flicking to mine every so often. Elena stretched quietly, her reflection in the mirror aligned perfectly with my own. None of us spoke for a while, but the silence wasn't empty. It was charged, humming like the seconds before lightning strikes. And in that wordless moment, I realized this wasn't just friendship anymore. It was something fragile, magnetic, and utterly beyond my control. It was one of those evenings when nothing felt right. I had dragged myself into the gym more out of habit than motivation, my body heavy with exhaustion, my thoughts louder than the music pulsing overhead. Every rep felt sloppy, every breath shallow, and no matter how hard I tried to shake it, I couldn't escape the weight sitting in my chest. They noticed. Of course they noticed. Amelia was the first. She always picked up on moods like other people picked up on music. I was sitting on the bench, towel over my shoulders, staring down at the floor when she crouched in front of me, tilting her head to meet my eyes. "Rough day?" she asked softly. I tried to brush it off with a shrug, but Sophia joined in before I could. She slid onto the bench beside me, her hip pressing lightly against mine, her hand resting on my shoulder like she was steadying me. "You don't have to pretend with us," she murmured. Her voice had the kind of warmth that could melt defenses I didn't even know I was holding. And then Elena stepped closer. She didn't crouch, didn't sit. She just leaned against the rack beside us, arms crossed, her expression unreadable but her presence grounding. "Talk," she said simply, her voice low, steady. Not a demand, not an order, just an invitation that carried more weight than anything else. For a moment I hesitated. I wasn't used to being seen this way, not just as someone strong or eager or distracting, but as someone human. Vulnerable, breakable. But under their combined gazes, Amelia's bright concern, Sophia's quiet tenderness, Elena's calm patience. I felt the words spilling out before I could stop them. I told them about the doubts that chased me when I wasn't here, about feeling like I was always behind, like I wasn't enough. Too young, too inexperienced, trying to keep up in a world that seemed so much older, sharper, more certain. My voice cracked once, barely audible over the clank of weights, but they heard it. Amelia's hand slipped over mine, squeezing gently, grounding me. Sophia leaned a little closer, her shoulder brushing against mine, warmth seeping through the thin fabric of my shirt. Elena's eyes softened, just slightly, as she uncrossed her arms and reached out, resting her fingertips on my other hand. A simple gesture, but steadying. Then, to my surprise, they shared pieces of themselves. Not full stories, not polished confessions, just fragments. Amelia talked about juggling work and loneliness, the pressure to always look like she was thriving. Sophia mentioned family strains, the way caring for everyone else often left little room for herself. Elena, in her quiet way, admitted that confidence didn't erase doubt, it just hid it better. Their honesty stunned me. I had admired them for their grace, their strength, their effortless presence. But here, in the low hum of the gym, I saw something else. Their cracks, their weariness, their humanity. And somehow that made them even more captivating. When we left that night, nothing had been solved. My problems weren't gone and theirs weren't either. But I walked out lighter, steadier, because for the first time, I knew I wasn't carrying the weight alone. The gym was nearly empty that night. The usual rush had faded, and the silence between the machines felt heavier than usual, filled only by the low hum of the music echoing faintly from the speakers. The fluorescent lights seemed softer somehow, throwing long shadows across the floor. It was just us, me, and the three women who had become the center of my world without even trying. We trained later than usual, our pace slower, conversations breaking the quiet more often than the clank of weights. There was no rush to leave, no urgency in the movements, just time stretching out, bending into something intimate. Amelia was the first to blur the line between casual and something else. She stood behind me while I worked through a set, her voice low near my ear, correcting my form. "Lower your shoulders. Breathe." Her hands pressed lightly against my waist, adjusting me. The heat of her touch spread through me, lingering long after she pulled away. I wasn't sure if my pulse was racing from the exercise or from her closeness. Sophia joined next, her presence gentler but no less affecting. After I racked the weights, she handed me a towel, brushing stray hair from her face with her free hand. Our fingers touched, barely, and I felt it all the way up my arm. She smiled knowingly, like she felt it too, then sat beside me, her thigh brushing mine as if it belonged there. Elena was different. She said little, as always, but her silence wasn't distant. When I looked up, I found her watching me in the mirror, her gaze steady, unflinching. She didn't look away. For a moment, neither did I. Something passed between us in that reflection. Unspoken, undeniable. It wasn't a smile, wasn't a word, but it was as real as touch. We moved into stretches, the quiet rhythm of our breathing filling the space. Amelia guided me into position, her hand sliding down my arm as she adjusted the angle. Sophia crouched beside me, her palm flat against my shoulder, pressing gently to deepen the stretch. Elena walked around us, her steps slow, deliberate, her hand briefly resting at the base of my neck as she murmured, "Steady." It was nothing, and it was everything. Every brush of skin, every shift in distance, carried a weight far heavier than the dumbbells scattered around us. The air between us felt charged, almost fragile, like one wrong move could shatter the thin veil of restraint holding us back. I laughed once, nervous and too loud, breaking the silence. Amelia smirked, shaking her head as if she knew exactly what was happening. Sophia's hand lingered on my arm a second too long before she pulled away. Elena's gaze didn't falter. She just raised an eyebrow, as if daring me to admit what I was feeling. Couldn't. Not yet. But the truth was there, pulsing in the stillness, humming beneath every movement. We hadn't crossed the line, not fully. But that night, with the gym nearly empty and their presence wrapping around me like heat, we came closer than ever. So close that I wondered if it was only a matter of time before the line disappeared altogether. The night air outside the gym was cooler than I expected, crisp against my skin after the warmth of training. We spilled out together into the dimly lit parking lot, the four of us moving slower than necessary, as if none of us wanted to say goodbye just yet. The streetlights hummed faintly above, casting soft halos around their hair, catching glints of silver and gold in the strands. Amelia broke the silence first, naturally. She walked a step ahead of me, glancing back with a mischievous smile. "So, still trying to tell us you're just here for the weights?" she teased, her voice carrying that playful lilt I'd come to expect. I laughed under my breath, but it came out more nervous than I meant. "I don't think I've been convincing anyone of that for a while now." Sophia looped her gym bag strap over her shoulder, stepping closer. Her hand brushed my arm casually, though I felt the warmth of it linger long after. "That's because you've become our favorite part of this place," she said softly. Her words were tender, almost hesitant, like she was testing how much truth I could handle. Elena, always the observer, simply watched me, her arms crossed, her expression calm but her eyes sharp, as if she was measuring not just my reaction, but the courage behind it. "And how do you feel about that?" she asked finally. The question stopped me. I could have deflected, laughed it off, let the moment slip back into harmless teasing. But I was too tired of hiding behind my own hesitation. The way they touched me, the way they looked at me, it wasn't just in my head. It was real. And if I didn't admit it now, I might never find the courage again. "I like it," I said quietly. My voice sounded strange, rough in my own ears. More than I should, maybe. But the truth is, when you talk to me, when you look at me the way you do, it makes me feel seen in a way I didn't think I could be. And I don't want that to stop. For a moment, silence settled over us. My heart hammered so hard I was sure they could hear it. Then Amelia laughed softly, not mocking, but relieved. She stepped closer, her hand grazing mine. "Finally, we were starting to wonder if you'd ever say it out loud." Sophia's eyes softened as she leaned gently against me, her head almost brushing my shoulder. "You have no idea how much we've enjoyed watching you find your place with us." And Elena, steady as ever, gave the faintest nod, as though sealing an unspoken pact. "Good. Now there's no pretending anymore." The tension didn't vanish. It deepened, thickened, but it shifted from uncertainty to something acknowledged. We stood there under the flickering glow of the parking lot lights, a quiet circle of warmth in the cool night. For the first time, I didn't feel like their distraction. I felt like I was theirs. We lingered in the parking lot far longer than necessary, the gym now dark behind us, the night strangely quiet. None of us were rushing toward our cars. None of us were looking at the time. Instead, we stood in that easy circle, trading stories that had nothing to do with workouts, favorite foods, childhood memories, the kind of music that got us through bad days. Amelia went first, animated as always, describing her obsession with 80s rock bands, her hands painting pictures in the air as she spoke. Her energy made me laugh, even when I tried to hold it back. Sophia confessed she had a secret love for cheesy romance movies, the kind people rolled their eyes at but she swore always made her cry. Elena, after much coaxing, admitted she spent her quiet mornings reading old philosophy books, sipping coffee so strong it could wake the dead. These were not the polished, perfect women I had first admired from afar. These were people layered, imperfect, vibrant, and somehow they were sharing those pieces with me. The air cooled, brushing against my sweat-damp shirt, but I barely noticed. Warmth surrounded me, not from the night, but from them. Amelia's hand slipped easily into the crook of my arm while she laughed. Sophia leaned against me just enough for her head to rest near my shoulder. Elena stood close enough that the brush of her sleeve against mine felt deliberate, anchoring. When it finally came time to say goodbye, none of us seemed eager to move. Amelia stepped forward first, wrapping her arms around me without hesitation. She hugged tightly, her cheek pressing briefly against my chest. I felt the steady rhythm of her breathing, the quiet strength in the way she held me. Sophia followed, softer but no less affecting. She tucked herself against me for a moment, her hand lingering at the small of my back. When she pulled away, she looked up with a smile so gentle it made my chest ache. Elena was last. She didn't rush. She simply placed her hand on my shoulder, steady and grounding, before leaning in to press a kiss, light, deliberate, against my cheek. It wasn't playful. It wasn't teasing. It was acknowledgement, a seal over everything that had passed between us. For a moment, I couldn't move. My breath caught, my chest felt too tight, and all I could do was stand there, absorbing the weight of their presence. Amelia's voice broke the silence, soft but sure. "Don't worry, we'll take care of you if you'll let us." The words weren't just a promise. They were an invitation, not into something reckless or fleeting, but into something real. Something I hadn't even realized I'd been searching for. As I finally walked toward my car, I glanced back. They were still there, 3 silhouettes beneath the streetlight, laughing softly among themselves, glancing my way like I was already part of their world. And for the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider at all. I felt chosen, belonging, seen. Whatever came next, it wasn't just about distraction anymore. It was about us. Sparkles, if this story pulled you in, don't forget to like the video so more people can discover it. Subscribe for more slow-burn romance stories every week. And let me know in the comments what part of this journey stayed with you the most. Your thoughts are always my favorite distraction. Sparkles.